Amazing transformation. How one housekeeper discovered the hidden heart of a ruthless mine owner. Clara stepped through the grand foyer of Jack's mansion, her apron tight against her waist. The oppressive silence wrapped around her like a thick fog, but it was the strangers lurking in the shadows of the house, the priceless antiques, the polished marble, that made her feel invisible. With every swipe of the dustcloth, she recalled the struggles of her family. Each flicker of sunlight through the tall windows illuminated her worry lines, the gray strands in her hair testifying to a life weighed down by responsibility. The mine owner, Jack, loomed in her mind like the mountains outside, immovable and indifferent. As she dusted an ornate vase, Clara wrestled with an aching sense of futility. Day after day she dedicated herself to this mansion, yet she remained unseen, merely a cog in the machinery of privilege. Only yesterday she had watched Jack stroll past her with a disdainful glance, a monarch surveying a territory he deemed his. The thought of him, hardened by his father's legacy but shrouded in relentless ambition, made her chest tighten. Then came the news of the accident, a disaster that had left men she knew writhing in agony. It felt like a personal attack. The miners were husbands, fathers, brothers. Clara's heart clenched, torn between the creeping anxiety for her own family and the growing anger towards Jack for his negligence. Could his greed be the reason for their suffering, or was he simply an easy target for her frustrations? Doubt plagued her thoughts. Should she confront him with what she knew, or stay silent, fearing the backlash from both him and the town, caught in a web of conflicting interests? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. A long pause settled in her chest as she contemplated reaching out to Jack. Stepping into his world meant confronting the icy barriers built around his heart. Yet, what she'd uncovered, the letters from his father tucked away in his desk, had shaken her. They revealed a man whose compassion deeply contrasted the cold exterior Jack had fashioned. Why had Jack buried that side of himself? Was it a lack of belief in that very kindness, or a fear of how it would be received? Clara felt the rush of urgency within her. Her mind raced as she anticipated the confrontation. Did she dare hope that Jack could rediscover the empathy of his father's legacy? But guilt nagged at her. The community was restless. They wanted justice. If Clara took a stand, she could leverage Jack's hidden kindness. But then, was she betraying her own people by trying to redeem him? Shouldn't she rally alongside the miners, demanding accountability? The conflict twisted inside her, pressing down harder until she could hardly breathe. "Change," she whispered to herself, her voice barely audible above the ticking clock. The urgent tremor she felt in her bones warned her that the chasm between them could either forge a new path or rupture into chaos. The choice loomed ahead, a chance to uncover both their truths, intertwined in a town that demanded more than just a reckoning. Clara grappled with the anguish of knowing that one single decision might alter the course of not just her life, but the lives of many. As the echo of her thoughts lingered, she understood this was no longer just about her or Jack. It was about the potential for transformation that hung balanced precariously between their lives, waiting to tip into the unknown. Clara stood in the dimly lit kitchen, the aroma of burnt bread lingering in the air as she absent-mindedly stirred a pot of soup simmering on the stove. The clatter of her mind drowned out the earthy scent as visions of Jack infiltrated her thoughts. Each imagined encounter sent a shiver down her spine, amplifying her frustration and fear. What would she say? Would he even listen? The reality of the miner's suffering weighed heavily on her. Images of their families flooded her mind. She recalled the faces of the men who had walked home each evening, laughter escaping their lips, now replaced by silence and grief. She slammed a wooden spoon against the pot, splashing the broth onto her apron. "Enough," she whispered, taking a breath to steady herself. Maintaining the status quo would only perpetuate the pain. In that moment, Clara recognized a flicker of determination rising from the ashes of her doubts. The forgotten compassion in Jack's father's letters ignited a spark. Perhaps she could reach him, peel back the layers of indifference, and reveal a man capable of change. Yet the fear of rejection loomed large, gnawing at her ambitions. She had spent years ensuring her own voice was muted in the shadow of others. As she prepared the soup, she began to question her boundaries. Why was she so afraid of confrontation? Was it merely the fear of being dismissed, or was it a deeper terror of exposing her vulnerabilities? Clara looked out the window towards the tall pines that encircled Jack's estate, ever watchful, ever silent. Maybe those trees too had found their roots in confrontation, standing strong against the winds of hardship. With renewed purpose, she set the soup aside and grabbed a notepad from the counter. Each stroke of her pen was a small act of rebellion, a reclamation of her narrative. She wrote down her thoughts, her feelings swirling into a coherent plan. Gather her courage, confront Jack with the letters, and demand accountability. But ominous thoughts clouded her resolve. What if the letters did nothing to awaken his empathy? What if Jack was as unyielding as his father, intent on perpetuating a legacy of greed? The idea made her hand tremble, questioning the wisdom of her approach. Could she risk the safety of her family for the sake of a gamble on an untested man's heart? Yet deep within, a relentless longing for justice stirred. Those miners deserved to have someone fight for them, and Clara felt an unshakable responsibility to be that voice. Pushing aside the doubts that threatened to engulf her spirit, Clara focused on the task ahead. Before she could rethink her plan further, Clara felt an intense determination wash over her. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the kitchen floor, a metaphor for her own encroaching dark paths. It was momentarily comforting. Shadows could shift, could transform with the rise of dawn. She took a deep breath, the air electrified with possibilities. The time had come. She knew now she wouldn't only confront Jack for herself, but for every miner, every family, and every individual yearning for change. Clara slipped the letters into her apron pocket, a secret arsenal tucked close to her heart. As she approached the grand staircase that led to the mansion's upper floors, her heartbeat quickened. Ambivalence collided with certainty, and with every step she felt the ground solidify beneath her feet. It was not just Jack she would face. This was a confrontation with the life that had sidelined her for too long. With her hand resting on the polished banister, she paused. An unexpected surge of anxiety threatened to unravel her resolve. But then she reminded herself, change requires an act of courage, often in the face of fear. "Tonight, I speak my truth," she affirmed, inching forward. At that moment, she understood the true essence of transformation. It was not about Jack's redemption alone. It mirrored her journey of self-discovery, a path diverging from silence into the realm of bold confrontation. Clara reached the door at the end of the corridor, her heart pounding. It was now or never. The confrontation she had been preparing for loomed just on the other side, a gateway toward change that could potentially redefine the very fabric of their intersecting lives. Would Jack acknowledge the truth she held in those letters, or would her efforts be in vain? Taking a deep breath, she turned the doorknob, bracing herself to face the man who was both her adversary and the key to her community's salvation. The moment of truth awaited her. Clara stepped inside the ornate room, the scent of polished wood and the faintest hint of cigar smoke greeting her. Jack stood near the fireplace, his back to her, hands resting on the mantel, shoulders slightly hunched, an image more vulnerable than she had ever seen him. The flickering flames cast shadows on his face, amplifying the contours of worry etched into his brow. He turned as she entered, the surprise in his eyes swiftly giving way to an expression she couldn't decipher. "Clara," he greeted, voice steady yet cautious. The sound of her name invoked a wave of uncertainty, but she forged ahead, heart hammering in her chest. Clara had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times, yet she felt like a novice stepping onto the stage for the first time. She met his gaze, pushing the letters deeper into her apron pocket, their weight solidifying her purpose. "Jack, I need to talk to you," she said, her voice resolute despite the tremors inside her. "About what?" His tone lacked the coldness she feared, but the wall he built was still present, an unspoken barrier. Clara wondered if he even recognized its existence. She inhaled sharply, settling herself within the tempest of her thoughts. "About your father's letters, his actions, the minors, their suffering." A flicker of discomfort crossed his features, and Clara pressed on, refusing to relent. "You have a power, Jack. You can choose to change what he started, to be different." He shifted, discomfort radiating through him. "You think I have a choice? You think it's so simple?" The defensiveness held an echo of vulnerability, and Clara sensed a crack in his facade. "It's not simple, but it is a choice, one that could bring hope instead of despair," she countered, her growing confidence igniting the embers of her convictions. The letters now felt like a lifeline, ready to be cast. He stepped away from the mantel, crossing his arms. "You don't understand the pressures I face. My father constantly looming, the legacy expected from me. It's an excuse," Clara interjected. "You have the power to set a new standard, to stand up for those who can't fight for themselves." Jack's expression shifted, the anguish beneath the surface bubbling closer to the top. "And what if I fail? What if I can't carry that weight?" His voice cracked ever so slightly, revealing the cracks in his stoic demeanor. "Then you try again," Clara insisted, her voice rising with conviction. "You don't have to shoulder it alone. Admit your fear. Vulnerability isn't weakness, it's strength." In that moment, Clara saw a world of possibility reflected in his eyes, a vulnerability mirrored in her own journey. The gulf separating them felt less like a chasm and more like a bridge, a potential connection forged through understanding and shared struggle. "What if I'm not the man you think I am?" he asked, quietly, the strength of his sorrow almost palpable. "The man you need me to be?" "You won't know unless you try," she replied, the urge to reach for him overwhelming. She stepped closer, offering a piece of herself she had kept hidden for far too long. "Let me show you the letters. They could reveal what your father never was, an opportunity for you to become someone who stands for the minors, not against them." Jack's gaze slipped to the floor, wrestling with the storm inside him. Clara's heart raced. This was the tipping point. Uncertainty spread its shadow again, and she fought against the urge to retreat. It was a delicate dance, a push and pull that could unravel everything. "Will you listen?" Clara asked, her voice barely above a whisper, but filled with an impatience that belied her calm appearance. As Jack remained silent, wrestling with the uncharted territory of his own conscience, Clara's chest tightened. This was not just a pivotal moment for Jack, but a crucible for Clara, an invitation to confront her fears head-on, shaping her future as much as his. Then, with an unexpected shift, he stepped forward and extended a hand cautiously. "Show me," he said, resolve mingling with trepidation in his eyes. Clara realized in that moment that change stretched far beyond Jack. It resided in her willingness to explore new terrain, to define the parameters of her own strength. She retrieved the letters, feeling their cool weight in her palm, and prepared to share a chapter of history that could unearth not just Jack's heart, but her own deeper capabilities. "Let's start with the first letter," she said, the urgency rising within her. Each word held the potential to reshape everything. Little did she know, the letters would unravel far more than the past. Their collision would challenge Clara to confront the layers of herself she had yet to uncover. As she began to read, she prepared for the unexpected truths that would emerge, ready or not. The letter was slightly yellowed at the edges. Its ink faded, but the words still powerful, as if they yearned to speak. Clara's heart thudded in resonance with her growing anticipation as she began to read aloud, letting each phrase weave its way into the silence. "Dear Jack." The name echoed in the room, stirring something profound inside her. With each word, Clara felt Jack lean in, the weight of his father's history pressing against him like a shroud. Clara recognized that what lay before them wasn't merely a collection of past transgressions. These were echoes of a legacy that could either bind him to a fate he despised or free him to carve a new path. "I can't believe my father wrote this," Jack whispered, disbelief tinging his voice. Clara paused, gauging his reaction. She had imagined this moment 100 times, yet the visceral reality was much greater than she anticipated. "He is giving you a voice, Jack. Or maybe he wanted to." "Wanted to what? Justify everything he did?" Jack interrupted, a flash of anger igniting in his eyes. Clara recognized the fire that had always simmered beneath his carefully constructed surface. It could either burn them or fuel the transformation ahead. "Maybe to warn you," Clara replied, her voice steady despite the tension hanging between them. "This is an opportunity. You can choose how you respond to it." As she continued reading, revealing tales of hardships endured, Clara sensed Jack's facade begin to crack. Each vivid description drew him deeper into a past he thought he had escaped. A tapestry of suffering and the longing for redemption danced through the letters, illuminating paths not yet traveled. With every intricate sentiment about responsibility woven into the fabric of their lives, Clara could see Jack grappling with the magnitude of expectations that weighed on him. The shadows of his father seemed to loom larger as the truth unfolded. It was a burden that paralyzed him. Jack's jaw clenched. "I never wanted this. I never wanted to follow in his footsteps." Clara met his gaze, her heart racing. "Then don't. Rewrite your story. You've already taken a step towards something greater by being here with me. Together, you can turn this legacy of pain into one of hope." His eyes softened, revealing the conflict swirling within. A hint of resolve flickered as he shook his head, the weight of the letters feeling less oppressive. "But how? I don't know where to begin." "Start with honesty, first with yourself, then with the people around you. Acknowledge your fear, but don't allow it to define you. That vulnerability is the key to genuine strength," she urged, recognizing the turning point not just for him, but for herself too. It wasn't just Jack who needed to evolve. Clara had to embrace her own potential beyond this moment. The letters only scratched the surface, uncovering questions Clara had not allowed herself to entertain. Who was she, standing before a man torn between expectation and desire? What were her responsibilities in guiding him, in sharing her thoughts and fears? As she handed Jack more letters, the energy in the room shifted, tethering them together through shared vulnerability. "I want to try," Jack finally said, voice steadying as he accepted the next letter. Clara could feel her heart swell, balancing between hope and caution, aware that they were on an uncharted path. Yet uncertainty still loomed. Would Jack's newfound determination withstand the inevitable backlash from those clinging to old paradigms? Clara shook her head, pushing further into contemplation. This was the moment that defined them both, and it sparked a fear she had to confront. Sudden awareness washed over her. This journey could expose her own aspirations, even amidst Jack's struggle. What larger purpose did this serve for her? She couldn't remain a mere spectator. She needed to assert herself. As Jack read on, their synergy began to forge something new. And then, there it was, a revelation. The realization that true transformation came with risk, ready to unravel not just Jack's identity, but her own. Clara felt the space between them expand, filled with immense possibilities. "Together," she whispered, more to herself than to him, "we can make a difference. But at what cost?" In the midst of her internal questioning, a knock on the door broke through, sending chills down her spine. It signified the world beyond their fragile epiphany, and Clara braced herself, knowing that whatever awaited them would demand more than they had prepared for. The moment of truth lingered just beyond the threshold, waiting to put their emerging courage to the test. Clara's heart raced as she turned her gaze to Jack, who looked equally unsettled. "Are you ready for this?" he asked, uncertainty etched on his brow. "I don't think we have a choice," Clara replied, steeling herself as they faced the door together. With a shared breath, they stepped toward the unknown, knowing their true trials were only just beginning. The door creaked open, revealing a figure shrouded in shadows, their past crashing back with an unexpected force. Clara blinked, heart racing in a cocktail of fear and determination. Before them stood Cole, Jack's estranged brother. The remnants of their childhood resentment stung the air thickly between them. "What are you doing here?" Cole's voice dripped with a mixture of surprise and contempt, taking a step inside. The dim light cast sharp angles on his face, his expression caught between intrigue and dismissal. Clara felt Jack stiffen beside her. "We were just reading Dad's letters," Cole finished for him, eyes narrowing. "You've turned into a real sentimentalist, haven't you, Jack? Still believing in fairy tales?" Jack's jaw tightened, a flicker of anger igniting at the dismissal of their work. Clara sensed it, the delicate balance they had begun to establish now teetering on the edge of confrontation. Would their progress dissolve under the weight of familial judgment? "Cole, that's unfair," Clara interjected, her voice steadying as she stepped forward, unwilling to allow Jack's brother to trample on their fragile progress. "We're trying to understand, to move forward." "Move forward?" Cole scoffed. "You mean back to his pathetic past? You think sifting through old letters is going to change anything?" The challenge hung heavily in the air, mixing with Clara's mounting resolve. "Maybe it can," Jack replied, surprising Clara with the strength in his voice. "Maybe confronting the truth could—" "The truth?" Cole shot back, anger simmering. "The truth is that Dad's gone, and nothing you do will bring him back, or change the legacy he left behind. You're wasting your time." An uncomfortable silence enveloped them. Clara could feel Jack wavering. What would it take for his brother to see that digging into their history was more than mere nostalgia? He needed to awaken to his own demons, even if it wasn't a process that Cole wanted to acknowledge. "Jack, you don't have to prove anything to him. You're not your father," Clara urged quietly, her gaze shifting to Cole. She wasn't just talking to Jack, but pushing back against the toxic legacy threatening to entangle Jack anew. Yet Cole remained unmoved, arms crossing tightly against his chest. "And what is Jack without that shadow? You think you can just play house with him and rewrite history? You'll only drag him deeper into despair." The accusation stung, tapping into Clara's insecurities. Was she merely a distraction, a fleeting support destined to collapse under the pressure? She felt the weight of her own aspirations slipping further from her grasp. A conscious breath rumbled in Clara's throat. You can't see him, not really. He's trying to break free from the chains that bind him. The challenge hung in the room like thick fog. For the first time, Jack stepped forward, eyes glowing with determination. I don't need your approval, Cole. I faced what our father did, and I'm choosing to change my path. I want to rewrite our story. Cole's eyes flashed with incredulity, a mixture of disbelief and contempt overshadowing a flicker of vulnerability. You're kidding yourself, Jack. Confusion clouded the air, but Clara could feel the momentum shifting. Jack drew strength from her unwavering support. The path isn't easy, but it's mine to forge, not yours to dictate. If you choose to stay anchored to our past, then that's your decision, not mine. Clara grasped this moment, the urgency pulsing through her veins as she interjected. And if you continue to hide behind resentment, it will consume you, Cole. This is about evolution, not judgment. She felt a surge of empowerment course through her, breathing life into her resolve. She wasn't just a guide for Jack, she was claiming her voice in this narrative. Each person faced a pivotal decision. Would they remain trapped or challenge the confines of history? Cole hesitated, the air thickening with possibilities, doubt flickering across his features for just a moment. His resolve cracked like porcelain, but silence reigned as he weighed his next move. Maybe this isn't the end for either of us, Jack muttered, his tone softer, revealing nascent hope amidst the tension. Clara sensed a door opening, an invitation for transformation, not just for Jack, but for all of them. As the words hung in the air, Clara felt an electric charge, the path ahead lighting up with newfound resolve. But what would be the cost of such confrontation? The tension swelled as all eyes awaited Cole's response. Would he remain shackled to bitterness, or could he step into the light of change? And in that moment, Clara realized the truth. This was not simply about Jack's journey, but her own, tethered together by a destiny waiting to be reimagined. "Are you willing to face this?" Jack asked, his voice steady.
I don't know, Cole admitted, uncertainty lacing his tone. The weight of possibility hung heavy in the room, and Clara barely contained her anticipation. Would Cole take that leap into confrontation, or would he retreat back into his well-worn shadows? With each breath, the decision loomed larger. This was the moment that could shatter expectations or ignite a new legacy. The door wasn't just ajar, it was wide open, and the void beyond was ready to swallow them whole. Clara stood at the crossroads, the air charged with unspoken possibilities. She focused on Cole, his uncertainty morphing into a wild kaleidoscope of emotions. This moment held weight. It was a turning point that could reshape not only Jack's life, but perhaps her own. She sensed her heartbeat like a drum, demanding her to stay engaged, to encourage this fragile, flickering light to grow. "Cole," she said, her voice soft but firm, "no one is asking you to forget what happened or to rewrite history overnight. It's about—" "Acknowledging," Cole retorted, rubbing his jaw as if the friction could erase the words she had just spoken. "The damage? The lies? What good is the past if it only serves to tear us apart?" Jack's eyes, filled with a mix of sorrow and determination, fixed on his brother, pleading for understanding. "It's not just about the past. It's about God, what we can still build. I'm tired of being defined by the shadow of regret. I want to live." Clara felt a surge of admiration for Jack. His journey was so much deeper than what met the eye. It was one of resilient yearning and brave ambition. Standing beside him, she tasted his transformation, one that resonated with her own silent promises of growth. "What about you?" she asked Cole, taking a step closer. "What do you want?" The question hung there, suspended in vulnerability. Cole's defenses seemed to soften as he analyzed the volatile mix of emotions swirling in the room. "I don't know," he mumbled, his frustration seeping through. "I never thought I had another choice." Just what?" Clara pressed gently. She could see tears of contemplation forming at the corners of his eyes. As he searched for clarity amidst confusion, she knew this was a critical moment, the moment where understanding could lead to healing. He opened his mouth to speak, but closed it, battling some unseen force. Clara noticed the tightness in his stance, a man who fought against his own instincts. The realization struck her. This was not just a confrontation with Jack, it was a confrontation with his old self. "You feel trapped, don't you?" Clara asserted, sensing the cracks forming in his tough exterior. "You bury yourself in resentment and bitterness because it feels safer than facing the void of grief. But through that pain lies the possibility of renewal." "A life where I'm not anchored by the past?" Cole murmured, almost to himself. Jack stepped closer, illuminating the shadows with warmth.
"Yes, Cole, I'm trying to break from that burden. We can do this together, but you have to want it too." Tension lifted in the atmosphere, replaced by a tentative spark of hope. Clara felt as if she were standing on the edge of a precipice, ready to leap into the unknown. "Jack's right. You don't have to carry the weight of our family alone," she offered, her voice filled with sincerity. "No more guilt, no more blame. Just the chance to evolve, to become more." In that moment, the conversation veered from confrontation to connection. Clara saw the shift in Cole's eyes, a flicker of something quietly breaking free. It was as though they were all daring to step into a new narrative, a stark deviation from the tales of grief and loss that had defined them for so long. "Maybe I could try," Cole finally admitted. "I want to see what else is out there." The words hung in the air, heavy with the promise of change. Clara felt the pulse of collective aspiration coursing through them. They could either embark on a journey of healing together or drown in the weight of the past. "Try?" Jack responded, a smile creeping across his face as relief swelled. "That's all I need to know. We can navigate this together, but it's up to you to take that first step." The door swung wide, unceremoniously inviting the future in. For Clara, it was a moment of catharsis, illuminating her own transformation within this family drama. She had dared to confront her fears, to embrace vulnerability, and now they stood on the brink of something powerful. But as the conversation waned and silence settled like a comfortable blanket, a new nagging doubt began to surface in Clara's mind. Was she truly prepared for the weight of honesty? Could she keep the momentum going without faltering under the emotional scrutiny that awaited them? As she realized the potential complications ahead, the looming specter of her own past overshadowed the present, a flicker of anxiety kindling as she understood they were bound to dive deep into uncharted waters. Cole's softer demeanor revealed a window of hope, but what unforeseen challenges would emerge as they forged ahead? Clara found herself clutching the glimmer of transformation, but as the shadows danced around the margins of their newfound resolve, she couldn't shake the feeling that their journey had only just begun. As the silence stretched, Clara felt a weight pressing down, a mix of anticipation and fear swirling inside her. She had played a role in urging Cole to confront his pain, but now she wondered if she was fully equipped for the collision of truths that lay ahead. "Okay, let's take this one step at a time," Jack said, sensing her tension. "What if we start with something simple, something we can all agree on?" His optimism was infectious, yet Clara sensed the trap of wishful thinking. No matter how encouraging the words sounded, the complexity of emotional relationships couldn't be distilled into simple action points. "I think we need to be ready for the truth, even if it hurts," Clara added, her heartbeat quickening. What if revealing their vulnerabilities would send Cole retreating in fear? Cole glanced at his brother, then at Clara, as if seeking validation. "So, we just talk?" "Yes," Clara affirmed, taking a deep breath. "And maybe we can share things we've hidden from one another. It might help us understand where we each stand." Jack nodded vigorously. "I'm all in. I mean, what's the point in pretending anymore?" The atmosphere shifted slightly, a palpable shift that put Clara on edge. Would Cole embrace this transparency or recoil further? Clara thought of her ample past, filled with mistakes and unspoken grief. The very thought of voicing those buried memories gripped her insides, a bittersweet cocktail of healing marred by fear. "I could start if you want," Cole finally said, his voice quiet. "I mean, it might help to get it off my chest." "Please, we're all listening," Clara urged, her heart racing. Cole took a deep breath. "I held so much anger towards you both after what happened. It was easier to blame everyone else than to just sit with my own feelings. I didn't know how." Clara's pulse raced at his admission. She formed a mental bridge with her own suppressed emotions flooding back. "You weren't alone, Cole. I was angry too. Angry for feeling helpless, for feeling like parts of my past had boiled over into our lives." "Then why didn't you say anything?" Cole challenged, his vulnerability turning to frustration. Before Clara could formulate a response, Jack interjected. "Because saying things is scary, Cole. It can be like peeling layers off an onion, and nobody wants to cry in public, right? We all deal with pain differently, and sometimes we're not equipped to communicate it." The metaphor of the onion amplified the anxiety bubbling within Clara. Layers. If only life was that simple. She craved the chance to strip away the layers of her own guarded history, but would exposing that part of herself help or hinder their progress? "Maybe we could learn to be better at expressing ourselves," Clara suggested, tentatively. Cole's brows furrowed. "But what's the guarantee that opening those doors won't lead to disaster? What if we drive each other away?" His voice tapered into a whisper, the fear palpable. "It's a risk, but healing demands risk," Clara replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "We have to be brave enough to face what haunts us." As her own words landed, an unsettling realization twisted in her gut. Feeling brave never equated to actually being brave. It was the intent to initiate action while battling the urge to retreat. What could arise from their revelations? Each concordance of vulnerability also birthed the possibility of division. Just then, the door swung open, and a gust of cold air rattled through the room. Clara shuddered involuntarily. Maybe this was the moment everything changed, or the moment everything fractured. She clenched her fists, sensing an urgency to reclaim her narrative before toying with fate became her undoing. "Clara, you're quiet," Jack said softly, eyes reflecting concern. "I've been thinking," she began, the weight of their gaze urging her onward, "about how far we can push to understand each other without losing ourselves in the process." "Why not take that leap?" Cole questioned, his voice imbued with newfound curiosity. "What if we create a space where it's okay to be vulnerable, where it's okay to be honest?" As the words flowed, Clara felt a stir of something she had long since dismissed, a flicker of possibility. Yet in that flicker, she couldn't shake the looming shadows of her past that threatened to envelop her. The battle within her intensified, torn between wanting to rise and the nagging suspicion that both honesty and further entanglement with their family's burdens could become an unbearable weight. Would she take the plunge and expose herself further, or would she hold back, sealing the fissures beneath her skin? Cole had unlocked his desire to heal, but what lay ahead for her? The flickering hope she felt began to dim.
Clara eyed the space between them. Could she trust this process, or would the past continue to hold her captive, preventing her from stepping forward into the light? The stakes were rising, and as their collective fears mingled, Clara couldn't help but wonder, what truth would emerge that could change everything, and at what cost? Clara drew a sharp breath, allowing the stillness of the room to cascade over her. Everything hung in the balance: the unanswered questions, the looming fears, and the fragile hope weaving through their tentative dialogue. She surveyed Cole and Jack, both mirroring apprehension, but also an unspoken desire to bridge the distance between them. Could it be that this was a moment meant for transformation, not just for Cole, but also for her own tumultuous journey? Cole looked at her more intently, waiting for a sign to continue. His vulnerability stirred something within her, making her want to reshape the narrative that had bound them. She hesitated, the memories of her childhood bubbling like molten rock under the surface. "I want to share something too, a truth I've buried for longer than I can remember." Jack nodded, encouragingly, and she felt an unexpected wave of warmth push against the cold dread festering in her gut. She took a breath, eyes dropping to the floor for a split second as she gathered her thoughts. "When I was younger, I often felt invisible at home, like a ghost in my own life. My parents were wrapped up in their armor of expectations, and I learned to hide, not just my fears, but my feelings altogether. I believed I had to meet their standards to be worthy of love." Her voice tightened at the edges, facing the ghosts of her past, but she pressed on. "So I perfected the art of silence. I never voiced my worries or dreams. I just played the role." A murmur of collective breath could be felt as Jack and Cole absorbed her words. "Which is why this," she gestured around, "this fear of being transparent is so strong for me. I don't want to be that person again, but I also don't want to hide anymore. You have no idea how hard it's been holding on to so many things." Cole's brow furrowed, processing her admission, and Clara noticed a shift in him. "That makes sense," he said hesitantly. "I guess we all build our walls in different ways. You chose silence, while I chose anger. How do we bring those walls down? Can we really change?" The doubt in his voice struck a chord within her. What if change was a distant illusion, forever out of reach? She had craved authenticity for so long, yet embraced the safety of her silence more readily. "Cole, we may not have all the answers," she spoke, her heart pounding with renewed conviction. "But the first step is recognizing that we can face this together. What if we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, despite the risk?" Jack leaned in, hopeful. "It's about choice, right? We choose every day to understand each other, to build trust. And maybe, by supporting one another, we find the strength we didn't know we had." Clara partially straightened in her seat. Could that be true? Perhaps they were venturing into a territory that had been previously forsaken, one where vulnerability could break the cycle of pain rather than perpetuate it. "Okay," Cole breathed, more resolute this time. "If we're going to do this, we need a plan, not just for today, but for how we communicate moving forward." Clara felt a flicker of excitement. It was exactly what she needed, a roadmap to navigate the emotions each layer would unearth. "I agree. Let's establish some guidelines. If we're honest, we must ensure it's a safe space. What about setting boundaries for our conversations? Topics we can approach, or those we might need to approach gradually?" As her words painted a suggestion of structure, the chill in the room began to lift, replaced by an exhilarating sense of purpose. Clara's pulse synced with a burgeoning resolve, fueled by the commitment to initiate change not just for herself, but for the dynamics evolving between them. Yet, as they discussed the framework, an unsettling thought snagged at her mind. What if delving into these dialogues revealed wounds that were too deep to heal?
What if their respective truths not only clashed, but shattered the safety they had come to build?
Clara's focus crystallized into a singular idea. The way forward was forged in collective bravery, a unified choice to disrupt the patterns that had defined them. But as they mapped out their plans, the nagging doubt uncurled at the back of her consciousness. It whispered of calamity, reminding her of the cost of exposure. Could she truly remain steadfast in the face of shared pain? Was this alliance strong enough to endure the truths that might emerge, or would they find themselves irrevocably changed, and not in a way that could be repaired? Clara took one final glance between the two of them, the flickering light of their resolution hovering just within reach. As the air thickened with unspoken tension, she knew they were on the edge of something profound. They were about to step into a storm, with each revelation a potential catalyst for chaos or liberation. And as a new sense of purpose flourished between them, the door to deeper understanding began to creak open, shrouded in uncertainty but undeniably present. With renewed determination rippling through her, Clara straightened her back, sensing the shift in tides. What awaited them on the other side? Only their resolved union and the truths they could no longer ignore could illuminate the way forward into this unpredictable journey. Clara felt the tension build as they continued to flesh out their agreement. Each moment they spent discussing their boundaries felt like stripping away another layer of the armor they had all constructed over the years. The air buzzed with unspoken revelations and tentative hope, but a gnawing fear wormed its way into her thoughts. Were they ready to confront the raw truths hiding beneath their surfaces? Her mind danced with images of their past selves, of Cole's anger, of Jack's protective instincts, and her own practiced silence. The immediate thrill of their new pact collided with the heaviness of a haunting question. What if truth did not liberate them, but tore them further apart? Focusing on the flicker of the overhead light, Clara forced herself to breathe. "I think we need to establish a safe word," she suggested, her voice steadier than she felt. "If things get too intense, the word can signal that we need to pause and gather ourselves. I don't want our progress to crumble under the weight of unexpected triggers." Jack's nod came slowly, but Clara could see the gears turning in his mind. "That makes sense. We want to ensure that we're able to express ourselves while also protecting our hearts." "And if someone needs to walk away," Cole asked, his brow knit in concentration, "can we accommodate that?" "Yes," Clara replied, grateful for his engagement. "Deciding to step back for a moment isn't a failure. It's a self-care strategy. We each need to recognize when we're approaching our limits." As they solidified their ground rules, Clara felt a rush of empowerment. This moment, built on fragile agreements, began to feel like the foundation they could build upon. But as her enthusiasm grew, her subconscious tapped her shoulder. Doubt loomed larger, whispering menacingly in her ear. Would their newfound commitment stand the test of reality? The conversation shifted to how frequently they would meet to discuss their feelings. Both men had different perspectives. Jack, a pragmatist who wanted a scheduled commitment, and Cole, who seemed to prefer a more spontaneous approach, allowing space for feelings to arise naturally. Clara reveled in the discussion, realizing she was becoming more assertive with her ideas as she weighed the merits of each approach. Maybe we can blend both. Let's set fixed times to meet, but allow room for impromptu discussions when we feel the need to reach out beyond those times. Balance could be key. "Balance," Cole repeated softly, his tone contemplative. "I'm beginning to understand what you mean by safety, Clara. I've been so focused on tearing down walls that I didn't consider the aftermath. How do we build something new without losing what we already have?" His admission struck Clara profoundly. It echoed her own apprehensions, sparking buried fears of how their journey might dismantle existing bonds they clung to for stability. "We take it step by step," she suggested, her heart racing. "We let each conversation guide us.
If we're opening up to new truths, then growth will naturally follow. As they locked eyes, a shared understanding sparked between them, hinted at a profound shift in their collective landscapes. But she could still sense the storm lurking beyond the surface, the fragility of honesty cocooned in resilience, and the risk of revealing too much too soon. "Maybe it would benefit us to identify what we want to gain from this process," Jack interjected. "We could create personal goals tied to these dialogues. That way, we're not just talking, but also actively working towards something tangible." Clara's pulse quickened. There was wisdom in his words, a beacon amidst the swirling doubts churned by the prospect of unveiling their vulnerabilities. But clarity quickly turned murky. The more she thought about personal goals, the more a voice in her mind cautioned her. What if her aspirations didn't align with theirs? "Okay," she agreed cautiously. "Let's each think of one goal for our discussions, and be honest about why this journey matters to us." In the silence following her proposal, she realized how pivotal this moment was, not just for her partners, but for herself. It was a chance to identify what lay buried beneath her silence, a revelation that felt increasingly necessary. As Clara took a deep breath, the chill of dread washed over her once more. The mirror of our collective honesty reflected the potential for heartache. What lay ahead was no longer merely a commitment to communication. It demanded self-discovery. Each goal carried the weight of expectation, a subtle reminder that as they chipped away at their facades, not every truth would be easy, nor every goal achievable. The session drew to a close as they leaned into the discomfort, their intentions swirling in the muted light. Perhaps they were embarking on a journey, one where every truth could fracture the fragile threads that bound them together. But Clara felt a sliver of resolve pierce through her uncertainty. They would navigate the turbulent waters ahead, together, binding their fates to the truths they dared to uncover. Yet, nestled beneath that small ember of hope, doubt remained a constant companion. What if the truths they sought revealed more than just their inner selves? What if they threatened to unravel more than just their individual lives? As she considered the depth of their uncharted territories, Clara realized they were teetering on the edge of transformation. A storm brewed, and the horizon loomed ominously. Would they find the strength to withstand it, or would they falter when faced with their own reflections? The path to their deeper truths was dangerous yet alluring, and Clara could no longer escape it. The next conversation could unwind the very essence of who they were, and all of them would have to confront the implications. What awaited them beyond the brink of this tumultuous journey? Clara took a moment, standing at the precipice of her own fears. She looked at Jack and Cole, two men intertwined in a legacy they could either renegotiate or allow to consume them entirely. Their vulnerabilities merged in the air like threads, brightly visible, threading through darkness. Clara felt a heat of resolve rise within her. "Today, we set the tone for our journey," she began, her voice firm despite the tempest of anxiety within. "Let's begin by sharing our goals openly." Jack's expression morphed into determination. "Mine is simple. I want to confront the expectations tied to my family's legacy and reshape it." Cole shifted slightly, weighing his words carefully. "I want to reclaim my relationship with both of you. I'm tired of the vitriol. It hasn't served me." Clara could see the flicker of hope in their eyes, a recognition that they were taking active steps toward articulation instead of retreating into silence. "For me," Clara interjected, heart steadying with intention, "I want to build a voice that insists on honesty and embrace it, no matter how daunting it feels." In that moment, Clara experienced a surge of clarity. Here they were, laying bare not only their desires, but also the intention to forge a new path together. No longer anchored by silence or resentment, they were setting the foundation for interaction rather than avoidance.
As she absorbed their collective aspirations, she recognized an unfamiliar weight lift from her shoulders.
Amidst them lay the palpable tension of change, each participant willing to brave the waters ahead. And therein her discomfort began to elude her grasp. It was time. "What if we branch our discussions?" Clara proposed, warming to the idea as it blossomed in her mind. "Each week we can bring an issue or an event that resonates, something that draws from our past or fuels our current fears. We can dissect those experiences through the lens of our individual goals." Jack nodded. "That could work. It'll allow us to push through the discomfort, ensuring each session has a rhythm of its own. We get to challenge each other while growing alongside our truths." Cole observed the shift. Leaning forward, he added, "I appreciate this focus on building a new narrative. I would like to practice forgiveness, too, starting with myself and my choices." The warmth in the room at that moment was undeniable. Clara could see potential spark in Cole's eyes, an eagerness to unearth deeper motivations while shedding his burdens. As discussions continued, Clara unveiled something profound. She recognized that with every shared goal came a new transparency. Each man contributed a layer, unraveling the tightly woven thread of their past. They were actively reshaping their narrative. Weeks rolled by, and what emerged was breathtaking clarity. Clara's vulnerability fostered an authentic atmosphere where rawness was no longer a burden but a blossoming strength. Each goal evolved as conversations deepened. Jack found new empathy while confronting his father's shadow, and Cole shed years of anger toward both his brother and himself. One afternoon, Clara stepped out of her quiet comfort zone, plunging into a topic that had haunted her for years: the fear of abandonment. "As we navigate our truths, I realize the weight of having truly been invisible growing up. I felt unwanted, as if I never belonged. My goal isn't just to be honest, but to claim my presence in every moment moving forward." Watching both men lean in, she felt the contours of their understanding shape anew. They recognized her battle, and collectively they intertwined their individual narratives, forming a community valued by choice, not circumstance. As days passed, Clara grew. The emotional barriers that once confined her began to dissolve. She no longer hesitated at the threshold of vulnerability, but embraced it as a key component of her identity. Each insight shared bolstered her presence, and she felt her voice amplifying, growing readable, golden. Then came a pivotal moment. During a particularly intense session, Jack admitted that he finally felt free from his father's grip. "I stepped into the mines the other day, without fear, confronting both my past and present. It felt liberating. I'm finally ready to change the mine's operations." Clara's heart swelled at that revelation. He was dismantling the legacy that had defined him, not just surviving, but thriving, illuminating possibility within his community. Not to be outshone, Cole opened up one evening. "I took my son to the park yesterday," he began, emotions palpable in his voice. "For the first time, I allowed myself to be fully present, without residual anger or shame. I just played." Clara glanced at Jack, and they both shared a knowing smile. They were witnessing a transformation, not just in one another, but in themselves. The ripple effects of their commitment to truth were unfurling in real time. Then, finally, Clara had her turn. Under the warm glow of a lazy afternoon sun filtering through the windows, she stood up in front of Jack and Cole, her heart throbbing gently. "Inspired by you both," she declared, "I'm stepping into my own capable voice, no longer muted. I'm ready to share my story publicly, to bring my experiences to others who feel unheard." When the words left her mouth, they resonated, an undeniable nod stitching together their renewed promises. Clara felt embraced by their support, not just partners in a shared mission, but allies forging ahead in life. She took a breath. "This is my future. It's not just about me anymore, but about everyone who feels invisible." Days turned into weeks as they maintained a steadfast commitment to their shared path.
embracing the new season of accountability through honesty, each in control of their own narrative and bolstered by the relationships they built. One day, standing on her own stage before hundreds, Clara shared her journey. Internally, she marveled at how far she had come, from the hesitant housekeeper to a recognized voice for change. No longer unknown, her growth spilled into the crowd like sunlight. Their responsive murmur reverberated with empathy and understanding. Clara had come full circle, transforming not only herself, but the very fabric of their intertwined destinies. In that moment, she accomplished more than acceptance. She forged a legacy, a new narrative that radiated with the essence of resilience. She stood strong, a pillar of authenticity for those who followed, each powerfully embodying their truth. Clara smiled, recognizing the journey of transformation that had woven through her life, Jack's, and Cole's, the undeniable truth that intertwined their destinies toward a brighter horizon. With clarity that seemed almost tangible, she radiated confidence. She was precisely where she was meant to be. Now it's your turn to step into your narrative. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Comment below your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.
You know the importance of joining this journey of personal overcoming stories.